Hello and welcome to another live stream. It's in the middle of summer holiday, so things are a little bit on and off here. My son is home. Everybody else's kids are home and running outside here every now and then, so we're just gonna have to make do. I think some of you are even on vacation maybe, and we're not going on vacation this year, but I do have some plans though, mostly painting plans. Alright, so I started mixing my palette. I thought I would get started. And let me just explain to you, after I'm done with this, which colors I have. I decided, I think a while ago, that I would try to use up some colors that I bought a long time ago. Ooh, that's very strong. I bought them a while ago. When I started out with color basically, and I bought a lot of stuff that turned out to be not very suitable for portrait painting. And I think we all have some of those tubes laying around. That we never pick up and make us go like, I don't know why I bought this color. Hi Kelly. Hi Kim. Hi Linda. Good to have you. If you're new here, or not new and just not a very chatty person, that's also fine. You can also say hi and then disappear. Alright, let's take a photo for a minute and sort of check this in black and white, because I have to say these colors are messing with. Oh, that's not bad. Alright, I'm gonna lighten that one up a little bit. So let me first show you what I have before you think that I've gone nuts. This is a study paint called Emerald Green Hue. It is some mix of, I don't even know what, a lot of stuff. It is probably the most useless color I've ever purchased, and it's not a small tube, as you can see, right? Whoop, there we go. We're fine. We're good. This is Prussian blue. This is actually a really decent color. Prussian blue is a very warm blue. A little bit warmer, I think, than ultramarine. But yeah, I just never use it. Alright, bit of white. So what I did is, what we're gonna do today is we're gonna do 4 values. So this is gonna be my darkest value. This is my second value, my dark midtone. This is my third value, my light midtone, and this is my highlight. All right, so it's gonna be crazy, but fun. Hey, Suzanne. Good you can make it. Let me grab my reference photo. Your videos have been my saving grace this week. You call me. You're very kind. Thank you. So useless that it tried to off itself. Yeah. All right. So I got the reference photo from Unsplash. The link is in the description. And I'm gonna start painting a little bit. And then let's talk about what this extra value basically means. So last week, we had 3 values. So we had 3 values, and whenever you have a bunch of values, doesn't really matter if you have 3 or you have 28. The rule number 1 always is 2 values are always reserved. 1 for your darkest dark and 1 for your lightest light. And by lightest light, I mean the lightest value that has some presence. So we're not talking about what's it called, a spectral highlight, you know, when your skin is a little bit shiny on the nose, or the highlight in the eye. That one doesn't count. That's always white, basically. So the lightest light and the darkest dark are always spoken for. So then when you start adding values, you're basically fleshing out your midtones. So as we're going through this sort of series thingy, if you want to call it a series, the only thing we're going to be adding is midtones, and more midtones. I put this edited image up for download if you want to download it. Alright, so how's everyone doing? Is anyone any vacation plans or staying home? I didn't paint for a whole week because I had so much video editing to do. So I spent all my time video editing, which has absolutely destroyed my neck. Unfortunately. Hey, Ariana. Staying home for now. We could change our mind. I love people who do things last minute. So if you do change your mind, any specific place in mind. So his face is sort of fading into the, he has hair, trust me, but it's one of those photos where it doesn't really show. Nature, sea, forest, lakes, sounds good. Sounds good to me. Suzanne, I'm on vacation for the month of July. Newport Folk Festival this week. Via boat. That sounds really cool. Plan some museum visits. Nice, nice. Let's see about the chin here. All right, cool. So 4 values, 2 midtones. What a luxury. Let's start with that wicked forehead again. So the 4th, what am I saying? Yeah. How are we gonna call it? I'm always confused about values. Like this is number 1, I suppose. And then number 2, where we have this one as number 2, right? So, and you can see it pretty much here at the top. You can see it here at the edge, right? Which makes sense because this is the darker side, like the light is coming from that direction. So that kind of makes sense. And then you see that darker midtone on some edges. And what's really interesting to consider with this edited image is to see how big the edge is of this dark midtone. Yeah, because some shadows, especially we talked about the forehead last week, which is a difficult shape because it's such a big gradient, right? The gradient is pretty big. So this transition here is big. And then here you see these minor transitions. So it's a smaller transition from a very dark to what is in a little bit going to be a lighter midtone. And that, I kind of forgot that this is a bit of a transparent paint. That also brings me to another thing that I kind of want to emphasize while we work, because we're working right now, we're working with images that I edited, right? So what I do is usually I apply something called a median blur. So I do a little bit of blurring. And then I apply a posterization filter. Right, so my photo editing software has a filter that says posterize. And posterize basically chooses, based on an algorithm, it chooses any pixel, and depending on the levels that you set, so in this image I did 4 levels, it decides in which of those 4 categories that pixel belongs based on its lightness. So what you get is you get a computer interpretation of a value hierarchy, right? Because the computer decides this pixel has this amount of illumination and therefore it belongs in category number 2. But the way that we see values is perhaps the same, but when you reduce the amount of values drastically, like we did here, that computer is going to go, this belongs here, that belongs there. But your eye and brain may think, you know, in order to benefit the shape of what I'm looking at, or in order to benefit the artistic interpretation, I may decide that this value add edge doesn't change here, but it changes here, right? So that's a choice that you can make as an artist that a computer, or at least a posterized filter, doesn't make, because it's very straight. It does what it calculates to do. So when you work with posterized images, and there are people who say, no, don't do it, don't do it, I will always recommend that you keep the original photo next to it and say, okay, the computer chooses this shape or this edge. The computer decides that the edge from value number 2 to value number 3 sits here. And then you go to the original image and you think, do I agree with that? Do I agree that that benefits the overall shape? Good evening, Elizabeth. Late to the party, happy to have finally time to join again. Great. Thank you for being here. You always know a lot of things about pigments, which is great. This is a terrible paint. I'm gonna just say it. They put a sticker over the pigments. All right, so it's a yellow pigment. It might be an azo. There is a green pigment, which is it's a phthalo green, and then they put zinc in it, I think to make it lighter, but it's very transparent. All right, so now we're going to move on to value number 3, which is our light mid-tone. Now we're going to go back to the forehead, and I actually missed this tiny little edge here, but maybe we can We can do that in a bit. And we're gonna have a look at the forehead again. Because foreheads are not easy. Right, so based on the posterized shape, what you can see is these shapes are quite big, right? So there is a gradient going that way. That way, a little bit less. Right, so this is a little bit smaller. And we have the area between the brows. And then we hit the left edge. And sometimes what people do with portraits that are illuminated from that side, they feel like the lightest value is here, which it's not, because that's not physically possible with a shape like this, right? So the lightest value is sitting here. I'll work around that a little bit, and then maybe put some of that weirdness in here. Okay, that'll have to do. All right, so this is, again, value number, I'm never gonna learn, 3. Light mid-tone, and the light mid-tone here in this portrait, other than the shadow, of course, because the shadow is very present, but I think the light mid-tone is pretty dominant in this portrait, and it has to do with his skin tone, of course. And when you follow those shapes, try and remember, like, what part are we painting? We're painting the eye socket here, a little bit of the eye socket, and then this is the cheekbone, yeah. And then you have this area. The reason why this is darker is because then the cheekbone falls into the cheek. Yeah, you have this crease here, and then the teeth. So the upper lip here, this is why there is a white or a light value sitting here, because the light is hitting the top lip. And then you can follow that value, you can drag it all the way to the other side. Which also kind of defines that shadow under his nose. It's warm. Oh, man. Sorry, just... Oh. My cat is knocked out, which is great. Because she wants the door to be open, and then she goes to sleep, and then I close the door, and she's like, no, I want to go out. And then I open the door, she's like, nah, I'm good. And it goes on and on like that. And like normally my son is at his band practice on Wednesday evening, but now he's home and his guitar teacher gave him an 8-string guitar, which is a wonderful thing, except it makes a lot of noise. Let's catch up. And oh, where's my... Sorry, I'm a bit of a mess. With regards to value, Chroma, I have a recommendation. Chroma. Yeah! I want to get Chroma Magic. I'm gonna get Chroma Magic this summer. Yeah, wonderful. I saw that. I saw that app, I think, during the... could it be the Paul Foxton live stream? I think it was Paul Foxton who uses Chroma Magic. If you don't know who Paul Foxton is, his name is Paul Foxton, right? Go ahead and put that into YouTube. He does live streams and he does a lot of, you know, like flowers and stuff. Yeah, right, Paul. So he's great, by the way, he's great. He does great live streams. Chroma Magic, yeah. All right, we need... Sorry, I'm a little bit chaotic today. It's just... Paul Fox. Yes, great. You know how sometimes you watch someone for a while and then when you actually have to pronounce his name, you go like, I'm not sure what it was. He is super chill. And you know, he does all the references from like still lives where your brain goes like, no, this is not the right color, this is not the right value. And then he's like, yeah, it is. And then he puts it on his canvas and like in context, and you go like, whoo, he was right. Like, he's always right, I'm always wrong. All right, so you can tell like the hierarchy here goes from the top to the bottom, where here the highlight, if you will, on the chin is actually the light mid-tone, right? And we talked about that last week or the week before. I think both weeks actually, with that sideways light where you have this triangle here that is not as light as this one. It's a mid-tone, right? And if you it's a very common mistake that I made like a million times, where I was like, why is this not looking right? And it's not looking right because you're not interpreting the value correctly because of the difference in context. And some people really, I'm gonna keep repeating this every week. Some people are just better at this. And I am not. So I need Chroma Magic. All right, so this is our light. Lightest value. Fun times. And you can see in the image that the difference, how do I say this? The values here are stacked very closely together, right? You go from 1 to 2 to 3 to 4, and there's very little space here. So the transition from that light plane on the forehead to the shadow in the eye socket is small, and it makes sense when you think about it. When you feel your skull here, this is flat, and then all of a sudden it goes whoop, it goes... I have paint on my It goes inwards in the eye socket. You look at a skull and you see the same thing. It's a very, very sharp edge. And that's what this means when you paint them so closely together. And then here, this transition is much longer, and it makes sense because this is not a sharp edge or a sharp angle. You start thinking about shadow transitions and what that means in terms of what it says about the shape. Is there a corner? Are you going around a corner, or are you going over like a hill, if you will? Yeah. A smooth transition. Yeah, hoogtelijnen. I know it from depth maps. We used to make depth maps from in 3D. We used to get the depth maps from an area, and then we would translate that to a three-dimensional thingy on a computer. So yeah, it's the same thing, the way that you interpret those depth maps. Alright, so this is the bridge of the nose. Yeah, it's not a highlight in any way. Just gonna grab another. For a believable portrait, how many values do you think we need? 8 or more. Been doing some whimsical lately, so I rarely go above 5 or 6 with. No, I don't think you need more than 5. No. I think 5 is the minimum for anything that says, you know, realism a little bit. So you have a dark and a light and 3 midtones. I think that's always, yeah, that's pretty minimal. And I think with oil paint, what you end up with, because of the edge blending that you have going on when you connect certain areas in oil paint, is you automatically create new values in between. Well, when you talk about values that are determining planes of the face, I would say 5 is minimum. Right, so we have this, this light area here, and then we leave this alone because this is the cheek going inward again, but not too much, because if it went inward very, very far, it would be a darker value. You look at my the portrait I did of my mom. My mom is a little bit older, and so that fold is deeper, and so the value is darker. But this guy is like, I don't even know what, 25 or something. Right, so we leave this alone, and then here this indicates the start of the teeth. And this value does not go anywhere here, right? It does not belong here. If you start pulling this light value all the way down, you're gonna have a portrait that looks unfocused. It looks unbalanced. I mean, unless the light is actually coming from this direction, but it's a properly lit portrait photo, and no portrait photographer is gonna light a face straight on, head on. There's always an angle in the light. If there was no angle in the light, you would not be having this shadow here, which we're going to emphasize a little bit more, fill those gaps in maybe. So now that you have this stuff in, you can go to the next photo if you want. You can go to the next study if you want, or you can fiddle and fine-tune what you can. I have 25 minutes to go, so I'm gonna fiddle. That is just a great explanation. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I used to be a little bit scared of doing it like this. I think I watched a lecture maybe somewhere online about someone who was very adamant about not doing it, not learning with these digital tools. And I understand, like I said, I understand the point. And the thing is, you really do need to know what to watch out for, what not to do, and how to translate it into something that helps. At the same time, you know, I'm a very digital oriented person. I work with computers for a long time, so I'm like, we had the same stuff going into digital photography where everybody was like, no, don't do it, don't use it, raw photos straight out of the camera. Are you going to do a 5 value next week? Yes. Can you explain how I would choose my 5th value anyway? Would I take a piece of the lighter colors? No, so when we do 5 values, what we're gonna do is, again, we're gonna increase our midtones by 1. And I like 5 values because I'm a bit of a, I have a preference for uneven numbers of I don't know what, because you have 1 in the middle. So what we're gonna do is, the reason why I bought this gray ass palette I have here, because this is going to be our number 3, the absolute 50% mid-tone gray. That's going to be number 3. Number 2 and number 1 are going to be our dark mid-tone and our shadow, and number 4 and number 5 are going to be our light mid-tone and our lightest light. Right, so 5 values is kind of easy because you can sort of judge by the gray palette whether or not something is lighter than your 50% mid-tone or something is darker than your 50% mid-tone. Yeah, odd numbers. My first instinct was actually to go from 3 to 5. And then I was like, okay, let's try 4, which is interesting, but and the other thing you can do, like the posterized look is very graphic, and like I'm not a huge fan of the style itself, so you can definitely try and make the edges a little bit more like you're actually painting instead of, well, that's not fair, because the posterized style is actually quite a difficult painting style, so let's not be too casual about it. But if it's not for you, you can avoid that by messing around a bit with the edges. Taking the smartphone camera in, I think, black and white modus. Yes. The wonderful blue. So which blue? This, do you mean this blue? I actually, here's the annoying part. My old phone had a camera with a setting. Yeah, so this blue exactly is the is essentially the mid-tone. This one is straight out of the tube, right? So I was like, okay, that's fine. My old camera had a setting. You could just gaze through the camera and it would be black and white. And my new phone does not have that. And so I have to convert every image to black and white. It's a little bit annoying. When I hear artists pronouncing phthalo blue, not sure about the spelling, that's spelled perfectly, yeah. Here they say fail, yeah, fail, yeah. It's like phthalo blue, but maybe it's phthalo blue, and they're just saying it really fast. I say phthalo blue, I think. I don't know. Because when you start thinking about it, you start saying different things. I don't know. Phthalo blue, also cool. Tara knows she needs to plug herself, so allow me. Her foundation scores is off the charts, brilliant. Especially, yeah, oh yeah, my course. I probably should do some marketing on that. Or maybe a new run in the new year. We'll see about that. I have some plans for next year. That was a fun course to do, though. Um, is it on your website? Yes. No, it's on my website. It was the first course that I did after I did Mixed Emotions with Cara Bullock. It was the first course that I made for my own website, for my own school. And I did different modules on different mediums. So we have some pastel and then paint and then mixed media. And we had a great time in the Facebook group. It is a very extensive course. That is because I did the first run. I think I did a week per project, and that was just not enough because I like to overshare, and I'm not even gonna apologize for that. So it's a very extensive course. Yeah, we basically cover everything. Bit of values. But you can find it on my website under courses. I like in-depth. Yeah, I like in-depth. I'm always like, let me add this one topic, just this one topic. And then I'm another 3 videos in. Thank goodness for your oversharing. My brain is able to get quiet and listen. I feel like we're very much on the same page regarding that. I love it when people just bombard me with stuff. It's the only way my brain will shut up for a little bit. Who are you? You are a value number. Oh, that's a dirty brush. I think in some of the photos I saw he was wearing a white shirt, so I'm gonna go ahead and ignore that because that has never made any photo better. My dirty brush. So basically you end up, if you paint like me, you end up with 30 values at the end of your sessions. Okay. I think this looks pretty decent. cute. Nice, 50 minutes. That's good enough for me. Alright, so that's it. 5 values next week. I'm gonna try and pick the ugliest colors I have. Yeah, I'm gonna pick some really ugly colors. I think last year when I did the daily paintings, I did some paintings with literally the most disastrous tubes of paint that I ever purchased. So they're still laying around here. It was literally me going, I don't know what to buy, I'll just buy everything. Woo! I buy clothes like that as well. I go like, oh yeah, that looks great, and then it's like I don't know, what was I thinking? So now I wear black all the time. Yes. Thank you for joining me. I'm gonna take off my clothes because it's so hot right now and lay on the couch. Thank you again. Which colors? I'm not gonna tell. I need to think about that. I have more ugly colors than I have values available, so I'm gonna have to think about that. It's gonna be fun. Have a good week. Have a good vacation if you're on vacation. And I will see you next week or on social media. Bye bye. Mwah.